A human man was forced to marry an alien woman because he touched her without her permission. Captain Jace Thorne had been warned about diplomatic receptions aboard Kisari Prime. They told him to smile, nod, and for the love of all that was breathable, don't touch anything. He'd managed 2 out of 3. The problem was the anything had included people, and technically it had only been a brush, an accidental graze of the arm. A simple human mistake. The sort one makes when one turns too quickly while balancing a flute of fizzing Vortian punch and navigating a conversation with a 3-eyed ambassador named Yulk, who kept referring to Jace as Space Handsome. The arm he had touched, unfortunately, belonged to Lyrren of Veashar. She hadn't flinched. She hadn't blinked. She had just looked at him. And Jace, ever the master of recovery, had grinned like a man who just found out his escape pod was full of bees. "Nice skin," he had said. I mean, not in a weird way, just radiant, like a polished mood ring. The silence that followed could have frozen a sun. Lyrren's ears, long and elegantly curved like sculpted obsidian, gave a subtle twitch. She stepped back with regal calm, but Jace could sense the danger like the warning hum of a plasma blade. Within seconds, a squad of Vaelish honor guards surrounded him, weapons drawn, and the music stopped. A Grell symphony bot coughed and began playing a minor key dirge. Ambassador Yulk slunk away into the crowd with a whimper, muttering something about the human touch curse. Jace held up both hands. "I swear I didn't mean anything by it. It was a light graze, a grazening, just some casual kinetic proximity." A voice, deep, mechanical, and far too amused, echoed from the intercom overhead. "Captain Thorne, please refrain from inciting interstellar warfare before dessert." Someone dragged him away. Someone else read him a long list of ancient Vaelish customs while he tried to argue that diplomatic immunity should cover accidental flirtation. It didn't. By the time he was brought before the Tribunal of Honor, Jace had sobered up just enough to realize the gravity of his situation. He had touched a member of the Vaelish High Court, a diplomat, a royal. And not just any royal, Lyrren, sole heir to the Matron of Blades, commander of the Vale Armada, and likely owner of several impressive weapon collections. Is there a fine?" he asked hopefully. The High Justice, who looked like an angry crystal chandelier, stared at him. "There are 2 options under Vaelish law, marriage or death." Jace blinked. "You skipped over community service. Is that not a thing?" Lyrren stood tall in the center of the chamber, expression carved from ice, body glowing faintly along her collarbones where her skin responded to emotion. Jace had read about the biolight phenomenon, but experiencing it in person was another matter. Her glow pulsed blue, a color associated with contempt, according to the diplomatic dossier he'd mostly skimmed. She hadn't said a word since the incident. Now she turned her gaze on him and spoke. "I do not desire this union, but I desire needless bloodshed even less." "Well, that's romantic," Jace muttered. "You touched me," she said coldly, unprovoked in public in defiance of sacred law. "That is not a small offense." "I didn't know it was a capital crime to bump elbows. On Earth, that's practically a wedding vow." The High Justice slammed a staff against the ground. "Silence. The rites shall be performed at first light." Jace felt lightheaded. "Wait, rites? Like a wedding? An actual one?" "No," said Lyrren flatly. "Like a funeral, but more humiliating." He awoke in a room made of living stone that hummed slightly when he moved. His ceremonial robes, which had been laid out for him with all the warmth of a prison meal, shimmered an aggressive shade of teal. The boots had no soles, hover boots apparently, and he spent 20 minutes trying to figure out how to walk without bouncing into the ceiling. The Chamber AI, an ancient model with a nasal tone and passive-aggressive vocabulary, kept reminding him to hydrate and refrain from making puns during the ceremony. As he stood in front of the mirror of joining, with a crown of anti-gravity blossoms floating above his head, Jace reflected on the many choices that had led to this moment. Most of them involved alcohol. One involved poking a jellyfish on Europa when he was 12. The wedding was short, formal, and entirely devoid of joy. The ceremony involved a lot of standing, a little chanting, and a shared oath spoken in Vaelish, a language Jace didn't speak, though he was fairly certain he'd just vowed to serve as a life companion, honor guard, and emergency battle mate. Lyrren spoke her lines without looking at him. At one point, a floating orb drifted between them and scanned their neural patterns for compatibility. It made a noise like a disappointed kazoo. The officiant nodded solemnly and proclaimed them joined. When Jace was finally allowed to speak, he stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Do I get a kiss?" Lyrren turned her head slowly. "Only if you wish to lose your lips." Noted. They were escorted to their quarters aboard the Valish warship Bloodstar of Serenity, which Jace found to be about as serene as a bar fight in zero gravity. The corridor lights shifted with the ship's emotional state, currently red, meaning aggressively neutral. The door to their suite opened with a hiss. One bed, no doors, and a lot of ceremonial blades mounted on the walls. "I love what you've done with the place," Jace said, stepping over what looked like a petrified reptilian rug with 3 eyes. "This is standard military housing." "Oh, good," he said. "So you're miserable, too." She didn't laugh. Not quite, but her ears twitched. He kicked off his boots, only to realize they floated back into his feet. "I think my shoes are haunted." "That is the neural imprinting," she said, removing her gauntlets. "They will follow you for the duration of our union." "Charming." They stood in silence, each on their respective side of the room, as the ship thrummed quietly. Jace scratched his neck where the ceremonial necklace had left a rash. "So, what now? Do we consummate, or is that too soon?" "It's probably too soon." She narrowed her eyes. "I'm kidding, unless that was a joke on your planet, in which case I'm very serious." A moment passed. Then faintly, barely audible, a sigh that might have almost been a laugh. A single spark in the dark. "Captain," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "I have killed men for less than your sense of humor." "That feels like a compliment?" "No." He lay down on the floor, arms crossed behind his head, staring at the flickering ceiling lights. "You know, I always thought I'd die alone, but getting fake married to an alien diplomat before my inevitable demise? That's new." She didn't answer, but she didn't kick him out of the room either. Progress. The warship Bloodstar of Serenity did not have a spa. It did, however, have a cryo-detox chamber, a meditation arena, and something called the Pit of Harmonious Screaming, which turned out to be less metaphorical than Jace had hoped. Lyrren's people weren't big on relaxation. They believed bonding occurred best through shared hardship, structured conflict, and joint weapon maintenance. By the 3rd day of their enforced union, Jace had been stabbed twice, vapor-scorched once, and emotionally flayed during a cultural exercise that involved mutual telepathic exposure. Apparently, Valish couples traditionally began their lives together by unveiling the soul through fire. Jace unveiled mostly panic and a vivid memory of being pantsed in space camp. Lyrren, in contrast, had projected the calm focus of someone imagining 15 different ways to dismember him. "You fear many things," she said coolly afterward, sipping from a cup that smelled like burning cinnamon. "I'm human," Jace said. "Fear is how we survived long enough to ruin every planet we touched." They sat in silence, the hum of the ship around them. Jace eyed the ceiling, where motes of light floated like dust in a zeroed snow globe. "You miss your planet," Lyrren observed. He tilted his head. "How'd you know?" "You dream of wind," she said. "Your thoughts taste like salt." That's either deeply poetic or deeply weird. Both can be true. Despite their differences, or possibly because of them, they had started talking. Not about their feelings or the absurdity of being cosmically shackled together, but about little things. Jace asked why the Valish had such intense rituals around eye contact. Lyrren asked why humans named their ships after food, like butter biscuit or hamstringer. He explained sarcasm. She explained orbital duels. They were equally baffled. One morning, Jace discovered the shared comms console had a games module. He challenged Lyrren to a round of stellar chess, which she accepted without hesitation, and then proceeded to win in 3 moves. She leaned back, one brow arched. "You attacked your own bishop. I thought he looked suspicious. You deployed your queen into a gravity trap. She was getting bored. You are either a saboteur or a visionary. Depends on the lighting." Their next official activity was scheduled as Tactical Trust Simulation, which turned out to involve scaling a vertical plasma wall with nothing but magnetic gloves, while tethered together by a length of living rope that judged them both constantly. The rope, a sentient being named Glorm, offered unsolicited commentary. "Your grip is statistically insufficient," Glorm said to Jace. "I'm doing my best," Jace grunted. Also, why do you have teeth? Motivation. Lyrren climbed above him with the grace of a cat in an anti-grav ballet. She didn't sweat. Jace, meanwhile, had sweat leaking from places that should have been sweat-proof. At one point, he slipped and yanked them both down 3 meters. "You are attempting to kill me through incompetence," she said as they dangled. "I prefer to think of it as extreme bonding. Let go and I'll catch myself. If I let go, the rope eats me. Then climb. I'm trying. My arms are noodles and my spirit is fleeing my body." They made it to the top. Barely. Glorm gave them a B-. Later that night, Jace collapsed onto the edge of the energy mat they shared, only to immediately roll off it when it deactivated under his weight. "You have to sync your biofield," Lyrren said, not looking up from her datapad. "I tried. It buzzed at me." "Then you did it wrong." He sat cross-legged on the floor, grumbling. "You know, most married couples get separate blankets, maybe a mattress, a little privacy. This is Valish tradition. This is how horror stories start." "You are alive," she said. "That is progress." I can't tell if that was supportive or ominous. Both can be true. She glanced at him then. Her eyes, normally unreadable, softened just slightly. "You don't complain as much as I expected. I've been told I save it for the encore. Your sarcasm is inefficient, but amusing." Jace grinned. "Is that a compliment?" "No." He stood, stretching. "I'm going to find the sonic shower. Try not to miss me." "I won't." 10 minutes later, the shower unit attempted to deconstruct his molecular structure for a deep clean. He emerged cleaner, yes, but also slightly transparent and tingling in places he didn't know could tingle. Lyrren raised one elegant eyebrow when she saw him. "Why are you flickering?" "Cultural bath. You activated the displacement cycle. Should have read the labels. You are lucky to still have skin." He sat down on the edge of the bed again, half phasing through it. "It's mostly attached." A silence settled between them. The ship shifted slightly as it entered orbit around the ice moon Veil Tor. The planet shimmered below, all blue and silver storms like a frozen marble caught mid-spin. "I had a pet once," Lyrren said suddenly. "A Sherrick. It could mimic voices. It used to imitate my mother yelling at me." "That's horrifying." "I found it comforting." He chuckled. "I had a cat named Battery. She used to sleep in my helmet." "That is also horrifying. You'd have liked her." Another silence, but not an uncomfortable one. "You know," he said eventually, "if we survive this political disaster and no one assassinates me for accidentally marrying their space princess, I might write a book." "What would you call it?" He grinned. "Touched, the Accidental Groom." She rolled her eyes, but her lips almost curled. "You are exhausting. Yet here we are." The ship's lights dimmed to resting mode. Outside, the frozen world turned slowly in the dark. Neither of them spoke again, but they didn't move apart either. The bed was still too small, and their marriage still too absurd. But something, slow, cautious, flickering, had begun. Jace woke to a klaxon, screaming the ancient universal language of, "You are absolutely going to die if you don't get up right now." He rolled off the edge of the energy mat, hit the floor with a muted grunt, and stared at the ceiling while the alarm kept howling in an upbeat warble that sounded suspiciously like a Valish children's rhyme. Lyrren was already standing, suited up in partial armor, her long ears angled forward like signal antennae. She tossed a lightweight gauntlet at his head. He caught it, barely. "Drill?" he mumbled, voice gravelly. "Ambush," she said. "Fantastic," he muttered. "It's not a real marriage until someone tries to murder you both." They sprinted down a corridor that seemed to shift angles mid-run, the ship's internal gravity compensating unevenly. Jace tripped over a drifting ceremonial orb that hissed an apology and floated away. Outside the viewports, a sleek black vessel, no markings, no registration, hovered too close for comfort. "Stealth ship," Lyrren noted. "Yeah, but like stealthy in the we're here to kill you way, not the surprise birthday party way." The blast came through the starboard hull in a flash of molten blue. Emergency shields flared, absorbing most of it. The rest sent a shockwave through the corridor. Jace hit the wall shoulder first. Lyrren didn't even stumble. "I think my spleen has learned to teleport," Jace groaned. Lyrren tapped her wrist, summoning a shimmering tactical overlay that projected 3-dimensional renderings of both ships in midair. She pointed. "Breach pod. Small crew, armed. Fans, assassins. Less fun." They turned a corner just in time to see the boarding team emerge. 4 figures in black, their armor gleaming with refractive camo tech. Each one held a grav scythe. Jace raised an eyebrow. "Why does everyone in your life dress like they're attending a formal beheading?" "I'm popular," Lyrren replied, drawing her dual-phase blade. The hallway exploded into motion. Jace ducked as one of the attackers swept wide with their scythe. Lyrren moved like a shadow with a grudge, slicing through 2 before they could blink. Jace managed to shoot one in the leg with his backup sidearm. Right before the recoil flung him backward into a sanitation unit labeled "Do Not Enter in Times of War." "You all right?" Lyrren called out. "I'm fine, just got emotionally exfoliated." The last assassin fell, weapon clattering across the floor. Lyrren stood over the body, breathing steady. Her lights shimmered dull green, unease. "This wasn't a random attack," she said. "They came for you." "Wow," Jace said. "That's flattering. People usually ghost me, not actual ghost me. We need answers." The ship AI chimed in, chipper as ever. "Captain Thorne, would you like to record a victory quip for archival purposes?" "Yes," he said, straightening his jacket. "Note, marriage is a battlefield and today we won the pillow fight." Logged. They made their way to the command chamber where Admiral Viessa, Lyrren's aunt, and a woman whose voice could curdle oxygen, glared at the tactical feed. "You've invited death into this ship," she snapped. "Technically, they didn't knock," Jace said. Lyrren raised a hand. "The attack was coordinated. They bypassed exterior protocols. Only high-level encryption could have authorized entry." Viessa narrowed her eyes. "You're suggesting someone within the Valish hierarchy leaked access codes?" Jace crossed his arms. "She's suggesting your security is more ornamental than useful, like those pointy shoulder pads." The Admiral looked ready to test how far a human could be launched through an airlock. But Lyrren spoke first. "We need to trace the breach signature. Find the source. Whoever wants this union broken is not subtle." Later, in their quarters, Jace flopped onto the edge of the mat. "You know, when I imagined married life, I figured we'd argue about laundry, not assassination attempts." Lyrren was scanning a portable bio-relay. "I found something." He sat up. "Is it a love letter? A will? A menu?" "A transmission fragment, coded, directed from Kasari Prime." "So what, the assassination was outsourced?" "Contracted, professional, meant to look sloppy," he whistled low. "Nothing says romance like targeted murder." She didn't reply right away. Then softer, "You could leave." He blinked. "What? This alliance was forged by law, not by choice. You have not sworn fealty. You could seek asylum with the Terran delegation, renounce the binding." Jace looked at her for a long moment. "Right. And then what? You get labeled dishonored and end up socially exiled, or worse?" "I would manage." "No offense, but you don't exactly scream 'I'm fine. Thanks for asking' when people try to kill your spouse." She looked away. "I have handled worse." He stood, moved closer. "Look, I'm not thrilled about being the galaxy's most unwilling husband, but I'm not leaving you to fight this alone. At the very least, I want credit for the eventual dramatic rescue." Her lights flickered amber. Uncertainty. She said nothing, but didn't stop him when he sat beside her. He nudged her shoulder. "Besides, I've gotten attached to this ship, and to you, in a please don't stab me way. I have considered it. I know, it's your version of flirting." A pause. "You are a terrible diplomat," she said finally. "Agreed, but a tolerable partner." He grinned. "You say the sweetest things." The lights dimmed. The ship continued its path through the stars. Somewhere out there, someone wanted them apart. But for now, they were together. For now, they endured. The jungle moon of Talorith was not, as the tourist brochures claimed, a charming fusion of flora and diplomacy. It was humid, loud, and infested with aggressive vegetation that hissed at anything warm-blooded. Jace had already been tripped by a vine, bitten by a flower, and very nearly seduced by a tree that released pheromones when touched. Lyrren had decapitated the tree before it could get to second base. "This place hates me," Jace said, swatting at a mosquito with too many wings and not enough boundaries. Lyrren didn't look back. "The moon is neutral. You simply lack adaptability." "I'm adapting," he said. "I've stopped screaming every time the plants try to hug me." That was once. 3 times. I counted. They were there under the pretense of diplomacy. The insectoid monarch of Talorith, a massive, many-eyed creature named Verla Quen, had invited them for a peace ceremony. According to Lyrren's files, Talorith's cultural traditions involved ritual feasts, gift exchanges, and most terrifyingly, public expressions of affection between bonded parties. Jace had read that line twice. Just to clarify, he'd said on the shuttle down, when they say affection, do they mean like holding hands, kissing, interpretive dance? Physical closeness, verbal affirmation, possibly synchronized antenna grooming, Lyrren replied. I don't have antennae. Then use charm, if you have any. Now they stood in a throne hall made entirely of amber and glistening silk, surrounded by a chittering audience of winged nobles, each watching them with unsettling interest. Verlaquin loomed above them, glittering with authority and pollen. Welcome, bonded ones, the monarch buzzed in a voice that hit 3 octaves simultaneously. We honor the passion between your peoples. Show us the fire of your union. Jace froze. I thought we just had to sit and smile. Lyrren elbowed him subtly. Do something convincing. Like what? Pretend you like me. He turned to face her, dramatically placing a hand over his heart. Lyrren, my heart burns brighter than a solar flare whenever I gaze into your... Oh, stars, your ear just twitched. Was that anger or disgust? Keep going. Your eyes, which gleam like the twin moons of Calyx 4 during mating season. Your voice is like, if silk could threaten to kill me. The audience clapped with their claws. One insect burst into song. Lyrren leaned in and said under her breath, You're humiliating both of us. He whispered back, You said pretend. Verlaquin waved a ceremonial feeler. We are moved. You shall be honored guests at the Feast of Pollinated Unity, and there will be games. The feast was less of a meal and more of an endurance trial. Each dish was alive in some way. One appetizer growled at Jace until he bit into it. The dessert glowed blue and whispered family secrets. Lyrren ate everything without flinching. Jace spent most of the time trying to look dignified while sobbing through a spicy slug salad. The games were worse. They were paired in the bonding trials, which included navigating a maze made of semi-sentient moss, building a symbolic nest out of kinetic sand, and reciting one another's core memories while being gently electrocuted. First kiss? Lyrren asked as they were strapped into the memory mesh. Behind a dumpster, age 14, we both had braces, and it was medically inadvisable. Lyrren blinked. That explains much. What about you? He asked. She looked straight ahead. My people do not indulge in teenage fumbling. I feel deeply judged. You are. By the time they returned to their guest quarters, an orb suspended by vines that swayed every time one of them breathed, they were exhausted, slightly damp, and both covered in pollen. Jace peeled off his outer jacket, only to find it had grown a new sleeve. Pretty sure my clothes are mutating. Do not feed them, Lyrren warned. Too late. I spilled sauce on my lap 2 hours ago. They may be sentient now. She sat cross-legged on a cushion that pulsed with ambient music. You performed adequately. Was that a compliment? Do not let it go to your head. It is already crowded with nonsense. He sat opposite her, leaning back, arms folded behind his head. I think I deserve a medal for surviving whatever that dessert was. I believe it was named Whispers of Ancestors. It told me I was a disappointment. It wasn't wrong. She tilted her head. You act foolish, but your instincts were correct. The monarch was watching closely. Someone had primed them with suspicion. You think someone's spreading rumors? I know someone is. A transmission was intercepted en route here. It described you as a decoy husband and me as a prisoner in ceremonial chains. Wow, Jace said. That's surprisingly accurate, minus the chains. Unless you count that psychic tether thing we did last week. I do, he nodded. Still better than my last date on Earth. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the sounds of distant insect songs humming around them. Then Jace cleared his throat. You know, for a fake marriage, we're getting alarmingly good at pretending. Lyrren glanced at him. Perhaps it's not all pretend. His heart did a confused... Was that, wait, are you flirting? I am merely acknowledging tactical evolution. You flirt like a chessboard. You flirt like a malfunctioning droid. He smiled, and to his surprise, she smiled too, just briefly. The glow along her temples shimmered a faint gold. Later, as they lay on opposite sides of the round, swaying chamber, Jace spoke softly. Thanks for not letting me get eaten by that pudding, Lyrren answered without opening her eyes. You're still useful. I'm writing that on our anniversary card. I will incinerate it. They drifted off to sleep, suspended in midair, surrounded by bioluminescent vines, fake feelings that felt a little less fake, and the quiet ticking of someone's plan unraveling in the distance. The Galactic Council chamber smelled faintly of ozone and panic. Jace adjusted his collar for the 10th time, still unsure whether it was supposed to float that high above his neck or if it was malfunctioning. Lyrren stood beside him, poised as ever, her armor polished, her expression unreadable, her long ears perfectly still, always a bad sign. "Remind me again why I agreed to this?" Jace asked, scanning the room. Dozens of delegates filled the spiraling tiers above them, all staring down with the same expression of impending disaster. "You touched me," Lyrren said. "I meant the bake-off." "It is traditional," she said, as if that explained everything. "Disputes of honor among the Unity races must be settled through ceremonial challenge, in this case, culinary. I can't bake. I once burned cereal." Lyrren handed him a datapad. "You will follow this recipe precisely. Do not improvise." He scrolled through it. "This calls for crystallized starlight. There's a vending module." The council chair, a holographic projection with 37 rotating faces, declared, "Let the ritual of resolution commence." A fanfare of harmonized blaster tones played from invisible speakers. A floating kitchen platform rose from the floor. Jace turned to Lyrren. "This is absurd." She looked at him. "Do not disappoint me," he grinned. "I live to dangerously lower your expectations." 30 minutes later, he was covered in flour, glowing pollen, and a mysterious blue slime that had launched itself at him from a miscalibrated mixer drone. Lyrren, on the adjacent platform, moved with surgical precision. Her war cake rose perfectly, layered with razor-thin sheets of protein glaze and embedded with edible crystals. Jace's attempt resembled an angry meteorite with frosting. "I think mine's rustic," he offered. "It's an insult to physics," she said. He held up a finger. "It smells like something." "That is not a compliment." The judging began. The Valish representative sliced into Lyrren's war cake, which screamed briefly, tradition, and melted smoothly into a glowing, bittersweet syrup. The panel nodded in appreciation. When it came to Jace's creation, a silence fell. The Terran judge poked it with a utensil, which bent. Someone coughed. Jace winced. Then the insectoid monarch from Talorith fluttered forward, plucked a chunk of the crust, and popped it into one of their many mouths. They paused, buzzed contemplatively. "This reminds me of ancestral trauma," they said. "I love it." The council chair emitted a sound like a musical shrug. "Unconventional harmony. Ruling, marriage may stand. Assassination attempts are hereby frowned upon. Inquiry closed." Cheers, or the galactic equivalent of them, rippled through the chamber. Jace exhaled. Lyrren didn't cheer, but she nodded once. That meant more. After the ceremony, they found themselves in one of the ship's quieter observation decks, watching a binary star system orbit itself slowly like an old dance. "So," Jace said, sipping from a cup of non-lethal celebratory tea, "we won the galaxy's weirdest cooking contest." "Yes, and now nobody's trying to kill us. For now." "I can work with that." They stood in silence, the stars casting soft light on their mismatched forms. "You were supposed to be a mistake," Lyrren said eventually. "An obligation, a penalty." Jace nodded. "Yeah, same. But you are more than that now," he smiled. "Is this another one of your almost compliments?" "Possibly. I'll take it." She turned to face him. "You are still reckless. You speak without thinking. You fight like a drunk gravity well." "I've been working on my form. You have surprised me." He leaned against the viewport. "You've surprised me too. I didn't think I could care about someone who terrifies me this much." Her ears twitched. "That feeling is mutual." The silence stretched again, not empty, but full of all the things they didn't need to say anymore. "Do we tell people we're staying together because we love each other now?" he asked. "No. We tell them it's politically expedient." "Ah, romance." She stepped closer. "You are not what I wanted, but you may be what I needed." He took her hand. "I'm keeping that one." "That's going on a mug." Stood together, watching the stars turn. The marriage that began as a joke, a threat, a mistake, was now something else, something neither of them had planned. And that was exactly what made it real. Outside, the galaxy spun on. Inside, two enemies turned allies, turned whatever this was, remained exactly where they were, not by law, not by fear, but by choice. The end.